Welcome to Give Permission to Ask Questions. It's episode 21. And what's awesome about 21 is we're going into 2021. So that's why I'm like, yes, Mike's here from CVL Engineer. He's like my favorite person. And the theme today is creative imagination. So like Lorette loves creative imagination. And Mike is actually really good at creative imagination. So 30-second elevator pitch. Go, Mike.
Hi, I do civil, structural, and geotechnical engineering. We build cool shit all across Western Canada. I like to say that we are licensed to work everywhere west of the Hudson Bay, and anybody that needs our services, I'm pretty sure we can help.
So, how do you build cool shit?
Start by figuring out whether you think it's cool or not. I mean, a lot of it comes down to just figuring out a starting point, whether it's a homeowner coming to us or an architect or developer or something. Like, everybody has a different definition of cool, and that's part of the benefit of figuring out how to build a cool project. Like,
my dog ruined everything. What a joke. Oh, she's still gonna do it too. Dang it. I'm too lazy to like stop the video. That's my truth. Okay. What's the next question? Okay, what is cool shit? Do you know what I mean? Like, tell me what your cool shit is. I want descriptions. I want projects. I want like what you do, because I think it's fascinating.
I have no, like, so I've had other people ask me this question, and like, I don't have a definition for what's cool.
Oh,
Because I mean, like, nobody in my opinion has a definition for what's cool. Like, you look at fucking some of the 60s attire that exists, and people thought that was cool at the time, and we definitely don't anymore. So like, like, for me, I judge everything based off of, like, do I think it's cool? Do I think that there is something interesting and challenging here? Like, do I think that I will learn and grow and be able to help somebody or develop something new or learn something? Like, I don't have a hardcore definition, a hard and fast rule of what's cool. For me, I like building stuff, so chances are if we're building it, it's probably pretty cool.
I Googled cool. And like, it's funny because it brought back my grandma's like definition of cool. Because if you said cool to your grandma, she's like, I don't know what you're saying. Like, the temperature. So I was like, oh my God, like, you're right about the definition of cool. So a fairly low temperature. But the second definition is calmness. Hold on. What is it? Calmness and composure. So I'm like, oh shit. Like, what you do with the definition of Google is like calmness and composure, and it looks flawless. Like, that's why I like structure. That's why I like buildings. I like the process of it. But I'm like, dang, that's a good wall. Do you know what I mean? Most women aren't like, yeah, that's structurally sound. You know what I mean? But like,
the people aren't. I mean,
yeah,
the downside, in my opinion, of the current world we live in is that, I mean, there's lots of crappy builders and crappy designers and crappy developers that exist out there that are taking advantage of the fact that the average person isn't aware of what's going on. I mean, like, the number of people that don't know how to change a tire or change a light bulb. Like, I went to university, and I knew people that like were coming into university that didn't know how to like wash their clothes. I like, maybe this is preaching on a high horse, but I mean, how do you go to university and not know how to fucking wash a t-shirt? Like, I feel like this is a basic system thing that everybody graduating high school should know how to do. Like, it's a clothes washer. Like, and it just carries over to everything else, right? Like, it just like, if it's a building block, and if you don't want to learn it, that's fair, that's great. But acknowledging that, and then knowing that you should talk to somebody to get them to fill in that gap is an important part of it. I mean, there's lots of people that I think don't want it and don't know that they should talk to somebody to fill that gap. And then 2 years later, their wall has a crack in it, or their foundation's leaking, and they're like, oh, what happened? And then it comes out that their builder was garbage, and that all the indicators were there, but nobody bothered to pay attention. I just recently actually read a book called Power of Noticing.
Okay. I was
can tell you,
like, give permission to ask. That's why this exists. Do you know what I
Yep.
mean? Most people don't ask questions. They're just like blindly follow along. And I'm like, but ask the dumb question because then you get the smart answer.
Yep.
So I have to make a confession, Mike. When I first met you, I was disassociated that you owned CVL Engineering. And so you added me on like Mike, your LinkedIn and your CVL Engineering, but it didn't connect you own CVL Engineering. So every time I saw your post, I was like, who runs this? This is the coolest company ever. Like I'm like, I love structure. So I'm like, oh, Mike owns it. Like seriously, I think so. I started Syndicate in May, June, July. I think August I figured it out, but like I shit you not, I didn't actually know that you owned CVL Engineering for like the longest time. And then I was like, I'm not gonna tell Mike that because it's super embarrassing, but I'm like, I'll tell you today. So tell me more about your like tell me anything. I love your company and what you do. So tell me more.
Uh, like our goal, our mission is build cool shit. Like that's what our drive is,
Mhm.
and to support that, like our values, our creativity and practicality are two of our big ones. Because like
Mhm.
to me, to do cool stuff, especially as engineers, like you have to be creative, but you also have to be practical. Like the number one thing that we run into that I would say makes us most unique out of a lot of engineering firms is that like we do very little work as what I would call from like a purely design stage to like a design bid build. Like we don't do a lot of that type of work. We do a lot of design build or design support after it's already been tendered out. Like we do a lot of work with contractors and subtrades. And part of that is we take a very practical approach to it. We try to figure out like what's the best way to do this to get the end result, regardless of what gets you there.
Mhm.
You know, in engineering and specifically in construction, you know, concrete, steel, and wood are how 99.9% of buildings are built. You know, you can start getting into like reusing tires and bamboo and all this kind of stuff. But I mean, in in Canada, the majority of it is wood, concrete, and steel. But I mean, there's lots of projects that happen in commercial settings where they don't use wood because they don't think about it, because you traditionally don't use wood in commercial construction. You know, there's residential projects that we've been part of where like they've, you know, not been able to figure it out because they don't realize that, hey, you can use precast concrete to achieve that goal. There's so many technologies that exist in all of these sectors that nobody's carrying over, nobody's using new applications. And I think that's where the success and the long-term growth is by taking precast and modularization and engineered lumbers and new products like bamboo and all these things and marrying them together and trying to figure out like what's the best and most cost-effective way to do that project.
Mhm.
Don't look at it like, hey, this is how we've always done it, because shit, you can't do it the way you've always done it. Facebook wouldn't exist, Google wouldn't exist. We wouldn't be talking right now over Zoom
Mhm.
because 8 months ago, Zoom didn't exist the way it does. It took a global pandemic and everyone having to be stuck at home for fucking 3 weeks to bring about this change in technology and how we're communicating. Like, there's always going to be new stuff.
Yeah, we all glad. I don't know what's wrong with my volume. Sorry. So creative imagination is my favorite thing in the world. My company is run on creative imagination because you have to have the starting point, right? But like what I really like about creative imagination is you're the ones that like make it real. Because that's actually what where the magic happens is when your creative imagination gets to be in play and like actually physically gets things done. So like that's one of you're my favorite person, one of my favorite people in the world because like you play in the field of creative imagination and then you physically build cool shit. You know what I mean? Like that's so
That's what we aim for. Like, you can see it behind me here. Like, you know, I'm 34 years old, gonna turn 35 this year. Like, I still play with Lego. I literally like bought Lego a couple weeks ago and played with it. Like to me, like building and creativity and all of that, you have to do it. You have to get out of your comfort zone and go do it. And you know, I can swing a hammer. I've been in the field. Like, I think that's going back to what I was saying before, like I think that's one of our strengths, is my strengths, is the fact that like I've actually swung a hammer. I've actually put on boots and dug dirt. Like, how do you tell somebody to build something if you've legitimately never actually built it? Like, like the how do you tell somebody a perfect example? Most people can respond. English is hard sometimes.
I know, right?
That most people can like agree with is that like cooking. Like if you've never cooked, then to try to learn how to cook or to try to cook a recipe is very, very hard. But if you never cooked and somebody asks you to write a recipe, and then you got somebody else who's never cooked to then try to follow that recipe, like it's probably going to be a disaster. I mean, and even if you had somebody who's never cooked or who has cooked before that tries to follow the recipe of somebody who's never cooked before, they're going to make assumptions and they're going to tweak things and they're probably going to like smooth out some of the rough edges.
And so,
but they're also going to read some of it and be like, oh, maybe that's what they're going for, even though it's wrong or it's not as good as it could be because they didn't know, like the writer didn't know what they were talking about. Like, I think that there's a severe lack of practical experience that exists across the board in everything nowadays.
And like, how am I going to? We were talking about hobbies earlier, and like, pick up a hobby. You're going to suck at some, right? I have more to say about this, but like there's too much information in my brain, so I can't talk that fast. So I think you're right with practicality. Most people are dumb, but they're really smart in one area. But how do you get really smart in two areas? You practice, you use creative imagination. So like really fun people, really attractive people have like 6, 7, 14 things going on in life. Like the people that have a full life or like a really cool life or like build really cool shit are busy building cool shit or like doing cool things. So like I encourage the failure too. Like be stupid, learn from it.
Well, yeah, like one of my favorite sayings is like you either you win or you learn. Like I've always been, using hockey as the analogy. Like I'm an Oilers fan, and one day I hope they win the cup again. But I mean, like as it relates specifically to Team Canada, like every year, like I watch us, at World Juniors because it's almost Christmas time right now. As an example, I'm like, anytime we've skated through the round robin is we've typically lost. And in my opinion, it's because we don't play as a team. It's like, hey, we play some crappy other teams. We have good enough players because it's Team Canada that, hey, we skate through round robin. And then when we actually get up against a good team from Russia or Sweden, we shit the bed and we don't play it as a team, but we just play as a bunch of individuals and then we don't win. Like you have to lose. I think in anything, you have to be smart. Like, as an engineer or as a builder or as a race car driver, you don't want to lose so badly that you lose a life or cause somebody to be injured or something legitimately terrible to happen. But I do think that everybody has to lose. Like everybody has to have a shitty project that had a million change orders or a project that you had to redesign because you screwed up somewhere. And thankfully, like nothing terrible happened, but like you have to eat the bullet and pay for it out of your own pocket. Like stuff like that has to happen because that's the only way you can learn. And as you grow, you'll gain more people that have their own learnings, which hopefully shortens the cycle so it doesn't become as bad, but you still have to lose. Like there's always something more to learn because there's always a new way to do it.
And so it's like, I'm going to go back to hobbies. These are like the fullness of life. I told you about magic, right? So like, yeah, I can, but I hate it. But you clarified, was it Magic the Gathering or Magic, the physical magic? It's both. So like, I actually learned how to play Magic, slaughtered a lot of people, and I'm a hot girl. So people are like, oh shit. So then I retired. So like, so I'm never playing Magic again. But like, that was like the moment in life where like, I'm going to learn how to do this. Oh shit, I did it well. But now I'm like, I don't want to lose anymore because you know what I mean? I'm going to close that chapter. That's a nerdy chapter that will always have a place in my, but I'm busy doing other things. And then, so sewing, I'm really good at sewing. And I love like sewing because again, that's the physical, I don't know if you'd say girl version of, but like I have an idea. I want to make a pinup dress. I can sit there actually as a fabric, make the pinup dress, and be like, bam, that's hot.
It's a manifestation of creativity. Like
Yeah.
there's a book I read earlier this year called Creative Confidence that I got recommended,
Ooh.
and like it was phenomenal because it talks about how creativity, contrary to what a lot of people believe, especially as we get older, like creativity is a skill just like anything else. It's like
Yeah.
riding a bike or cooking.
Yeah.
And the only way to be creative is to practice creativity.
Mm-hmm.
And everybody's going to have a different way of doing it. And everyone's going to have a different approach about how they want to do it.
Mm-hmm.
But you need to be creative. Like when you're a kid, like not all kids, but I mean like the vast majority of kids, they have imaginary friends. They play makeup, they play make believe and build forts and do stupid stuff as kids and drive, play with their little cars. I've got a nephew that like we go over, he's got a city map that he has, like he drives, we play cars in the city on, and like he goes to the bakery and picks up donuts and all this kind of stuff. And like he's super into construction equipment, which is super awesome for me. But I mean, like we make believe and we play with it because that's part of being a kid. And like for me, I love the creativity and the playing and the abstract that he puts into it. Like he's using excavators to build donuts. Like, it's these things that like nobody thinks about, but like, someday I might have a God willing, maybe like I could build the next Google headquarters because it looks like a donut. Like all of a sudden you're using an excavator to build a donut. Slightly different scale, but I mean,
it's the same but different. I love it. And kids are operating at a genius level because they're using creative imagination.
Yep.
So, like, I encourage people to use creative imagination. It's like my best friend. Like, oh, who are you hanging out with today? Myself. And I get excited because I'm like, oh. And then like for me, 2021 is like I bought a green violin. I'm gonna learn how to play it. Like challenge accepted. Will I suck? Maybe.
Well, but even as it relates to a violin, like,
Yeah.
Do you want to play violin? Do you want to play violin or do you want to play fiddle?
Yeah.
Because I mean, it's the same instrument. It's just how you use it's differently. Like it's bluegrass versus country versus rock. It's a guitar, but you can play it in a completely different way. And like that's part of the creativity. Like I look at some of the stuff that people have made. You look at fruit art, or you look at ice sculptures, or you look at all of these amazing things. I'm a huge proponent of art in general. I've got a ton in my office here, and like to me, being creative and creating art exists in all forms, and everyone should do it in some way or fashion. Like it's just, my wife's a teacher, and like she's phenomenal because for her, like she creates art all the time for the kids, like because she creates an assignment that like, how do I teach a kid how to count to 4? How do I get them to learn the alphabet? Well, you can't just make them recite the alphabet like we did as kids, because for a lot of us it screwed us up because we didn't learn it because it was garbage.
Yeah.
So she tries to come up with these creative games with popsicle sticks and tweezers and things like that these kids pick up, and because it's a gamification coupled with creative output, like all of a sudden they're like they get it, and you can just see it click in, and it's like, holy crap. Like,
and you see, like, so I just did a post this morning that was when you don't learn, you die. When you don't learn, you're just existing. So when the little kid has the magical moment of learning, that's sacred, right? But when the old sage has the epiphany of something new, do you know what I mean? That's my favorite moment, is when older people are like, oh shit, I learned something new today. And I'm like, yes, like I helped you and I aided you upon that. Like this is why Phoenix Career Development exists, because I believe in lifelong like learning, and like we haven't given permission to like have a safe place to learn. So that's why I'm like, yo, come make some mistakes, do some learning. Yeah, I'm plugging myself right now, Mike. Sorry.
No, but it's fair. And like for us, like as engineers, like
Yeah.
I check out our Instagram, like I share a ton of stuff, but like some of what I share, I try to make sure it's educational. I try to make sure it's funny. I try to make sure that it's highlights stuff that we've done, but I also try to not sugarcoat it. Like I try not to, only show the glamorous, and thankfully to date, like none of it's been stuff that's gone wrong with stuff we've done or that's been serious. But I mean, like there's too much glamour nowadays.
I
Like
agree.
there's not enough nitty gritty because nobody wants to know how the sausage gets made. But if nobody knows how the sausage gets made, one day we're not going to have any more sausage.
Right? I agree with that. Like soy sauce used to have this really cool heritage about it. Like I don't know the whole thing, but it was like a process. Now they just do it like mechanically. And so there's one, like I don't even know, but like it was like 4 years ago, there was one place that made actual real soy sauce. It like doesn't exist anymore. So like real soy sauce doesn't exist anymore. And that's like we live in this world of illusion where we think it's real and it's not. Like my brain broke several times this year from like theories and concepts, but like the epiphanies are real, man. Like I don't think I've had as many epiphanies as I have starting my own company. Like this was the year of epiphanies. So like make some
Well,
mistakes.
and like the old adage, like fake it till you make it, like holds true. But I mean, you still you still have to have something backing that up. Like you can't 100% fake it till you make it. But I mean, so much of it is having just self confidence and the my learning personally over the last 10 years of my career. Like I've learned that I was a terrible manager previously.
Yeah.
There's times where like I was put in positions that I had absolutely no right to be in and sucked the big one at. And there's lots of managers that I can think back on who were amazing people that I learned a lot from. But hindsight being 2020, were terrible managers.
Mhm.
And but at the time, like the fact that they were cool and got along well, like I didn't know that. I didn't realize that. I didn't realize that, there's so much else that has to go into it. And, I use the analogy of a parent and a child. Like a parent can't be a child's best friend all the time because they're the parent. And the same goes true for running a company. The same goes true for managing and leading people. Like there's going to be crappy moments. If you're doing things right, it mitigates against having a lot of them and it makes it easier to handle them. But I mean, you kill with kindness, but you still have to make the tough calls sometimes. Like it's just,
So give permission to suck, but you're sucking because you're learning. Like
yep.
at the end of the day, authenticity. What rules the world is truth. Like I'm telling you, like there's a
Oh,
clear
yeah.
like this is right, you're doing it this way. That's also what I like about growth and learning and creative imagination. You give yourself permission to have a safe place to break the rules a little bit and like it's okay because it's in the ether of like abstract. And then so part of learning in creative imagination is that when solid happens, it's thought out and it's correct. So like give permission to suck, give permission to learn so that when you're actually physically doing it, it's amazing. Like that's how you get to be amazing is creative imagination, is failing a couple times in your mind, failing a couple times physically, but like your product is amazing because you've done that. You're the titan in your field. Like when I met you, I was like, whoa, you do what now? Very cool. So any last sage advice, questions, comments, concerns?
Find what you like doing and just fucking do it. Like it's like, I don't know. Like for me, like people have asked me questions like, do you like what you do? And, there's the old adage, like, if you love what you do, you never work a day in your life. I call bullshit on that. I mean, I work every day of my life, but at the same time, I like working. I like what I do. And like, I'm not going to say that I love it so I don't ever work a day in my life because I readily admit that I work and I like what I do.
Hard, and I love
But
it.
that doesn't make it different. Like that, it doesn't mean that it's one or the other. And I think that you have to find what you like doing in whatever form you like doing it. Nobody has to be a manager. Nobody has to be the lead employer. Nobody has to be an entrepreneur. Nobody has to do anything. At the end of the day, you have control over yourself. And if you're doing something, whether it's flipping burgers or being a CEO and you like doing it, then
Do it.
more power to you. Keep doing it and like just be happy doing what it is you're doing. Like
I took a class to be an entrepreneur, and one of the first classes was what is an entrepreneur and what is your job title? So you got to pick your job title. And I was like, oh my God, what am I going to be? Like, I was like, oh my God, I'm running a whole company. But I was like, I don't want to be a president of a company because I'm like, simmer down now, President Lorette. Like, that does not work for me. But I was like, I can be a director. And like, people still ask me, do you run Phoenix Career Development? Because I put it as a director, but I'm like, I run Phoenix Career Development. You don't need to know that like I'm the president. Do you know what? But I'm not going to say that. I'm the director of Phoenix Career Development. I run it. That's how I titled how like my position in my company is. So like that was creative imagination in play. It's real today. I'm the director of Phoenix Career Development. So like that's an example of creative imagination. And I love creative imagination. I love learning. This was my favorite conversation today. Mike, I super appreciate it. It was so appropriate for like December, the end of the year, to start the new
Yep.
year. So thanks for coming.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Give permission to ask questions is videotaped, or like not videotaped now. We don't know when now was, but it gets launched every Monday at 9 o'clock on YouTube. So if you ever want to watch the new episodes, do it up. So thanks everyone for listening. Thank you, Mike, for being here. Everyone have a good day.